Okay, are you planning to weld some square tubing together? This is something that's an absolute blast to do, and if you do it properly, it can look absolutely phenomenal. I just finished this killer rack for my truck here, and using some of the tips that we're gonna go over right here today, I was able to make this thing look pretty sweet. So what we're gonna be working with today in this exercise is 1.5 inch square tubing. I think the wall thickness is approximately 1/8 of an inch thick, give or take. You can see this stuff used everywhere for all kinds of different projects. It's super common. However, there are some mistakes that I see made with this stuff that are unfortunately just as common as well. All right, so a few months ago, I got a really cool opportunity to travel to a high school. And at the high school, I got to do a whole day of TIG welding demonstrations to all the students there, as well as some of the shop teachers. It was a really awesome experience overall. I got to pack up my ride full of all my welding stuff and then hit the road. This guy here, his name was Kyle. He's followed my channel for quite a long time now. He's the one that convinced the teachers to reach out to me and invite me up and teach the class. So more about Kyle later in this episode. But when we were welding in class working on some exercises, I met this guy named Adam. This dude was super cool and he was super stoked on welding, and he had goals to actually learn how to weld aluminum square tubing because he wanted to make a really killer rack for his truck. So after learning about his goals, we went over a couple different exercises. I gave him some things that he could work on and a couple things that are very common that we want to avoid when working on square tubing. All right, the first thing that we went over here that we wanted to make sure we did not do was skipping ahead and jumping into the challenging stuff like just welding out this rack right away. Although it's very tempting and it looks like fun, we need to make sure we're working on the basic stuff first. Pretty much none of the students there had any real welding experience. They had a small amount of basic experience here and there, but nothing really extensive that would fully prepare them for a big project like that. For example, like the project that Adam was trying to build. So obviously jumping straight into working on joints like we're probably imagining with the truck rack, while on one hand is pretty much totally achievable to at least get it done, trying to get really good results in the fine details as well as making things look really good. This can definitely give somebody a bit of a headache if they don't really know what they're looking for. So Adam and I got started on exercises working on flat plate. What we're doing here is we're simply looking to get the understanding of basic cleanliness as well as getting consistent passes every time we arc up. This is something that I work with every student in my online TIG welding program. We drill down on the fundamentals of all the most basic and simple exercises first, so that when we move on to more challenging joints later on, we have a much better understanding on how to build our way up with a good understanding of things from the bottom up. And in doing so, we experience a lot less frustration. So for example, if you're just getting going and you're still trying to work on the small details, working on little stuff like standoff distance, arc length, or whatever you want to call it, working on things in the most simple setting is going to be the easiest way to understand these things before getting ahead of ourselves by diving into the more challenging stuff. Getting comfortable with maintaining proper torch mechanics, standoff distance, torch angle, travel angle, all that stuff, as well as feeding the filler material properly. This was absolutely the best place to start. Getting a good understanding of these basic things at this level is absolutely imperative before moving on to any joints in my program. Okay, now we have a bit of understanding for that stuff, we can move on to the next thing we want to watch for. Now, because this type of project is quite difficult, it can give us a lot of problems that we can work around pretty easy if we have this next thing pretty dialed. You've heard about me talk about this a million times before, and it's very important, and that is being comfortable. So working on difficult racks or difficult structures kind of like this can take even the most seasoned welder and put them in uncomfortable positions. That episode a little while back where I made my truck rack, it had all kinds of weird angles where I had to position myself in certain ways, and when doing so, always one of the most difficult things about doing that is remaining comfortable. Now, I've been over this slick little secret tip here a few times on my channel before, but it's such a cool trick, it bears repeating here. So anytime you have anything like this that's a little bit awkward, or you have a hot surface you don't particularly feel like resting your arm or your hand on to do a weld, use a clamp. Put a clamp on the surface that you need to, and boom, you've got something cool and stable that you can now rest your hand on. Got an awkward angle or something like that? Put a clamp on the table or whatever, and you can even put another clamp on that first clamp. Clamps on clamps. Working around a truck rack or anything like that is going to be awkward. Maintaining comfort so we can see results. With tip number 1 that we went over, we need to be comfortable. Getting clean results, maintaining good torch mechanics. Having something like this to keep yourself from getting burned as well as keeping yourself stable, especially when working around awkward projects like this. Definitely a big cheat code to get you going with stuff like this much more comfortably and quickly. Now, this third thing is something that absolutely drives me nuts. It's completely cool, I get it, everybody's learning, but this is something that is not taught to a lot of people when they are first learning. And when you figure this one out, it is a huge level up in your TIG welding game. And that is properly wrapping all of your corners and properly connecting your TIG welding passes. Take a look at how things are put together after I am finished welding this thing. Now you see how my straight passes, they've all been connected properly. We do not see any gaps or voids in between any passes. I've maintained the profile and shape. Whether it's on a section like this, what we see here are basically a fillet joint, or the area on the side, I guess you could call it kind of a butt weld or whatever, or even a groove weld, I guess. We can see that the name of the game with a project like this is consistency. Typically what will happen is somebody will run a straight pass. They just finish, they set up, and then get ready, run the next pass away from it. Now I've been over this in another episode as well. What I like doing is I like running the pass that I need to. When I finish it, I stop, I reset, I then properly wrap my corner. This way I have a proper connection between the first pass around the corner, and then I get set up and I now can finish my next pass knowing for certain that I've done my TIG welding connection properly. Essentially what I'm doing here is basically one small weld in between two longer welds. This detail is so important. I teach this to people in person when I'm training them, but getting the chance to jump back and work with high school students who were first kind of getting going with their interest in this stuff, this was an absolute blast for me. Our friend Adam was stoked. He got to work. He finished his project and his truck rack looks insane. Dude, really, really nice work. This is really cool for me to see, man. Now, jumping back, remember that other dude, Kyle, that I mentioned earlier in the episode? When I arrived, he was so excited to get to work on some welding exercises with me. He had a ton of awesome questions. He told me about his plans. He wanted to open a business right out of high school. He stayed late to help me clean up after the demonstration. Overall, just a really ambitious, positive dude. So, someone like myself, what do you do to motivate somebody like that to get into the trade and stay with the trade? You give him your welding machine. This machine was basically a brand new 210 EXT TIG machine from Everlast Welders. I straight up said, this machine is yours, man. Take it home and get to work. He was absolutely stoked. I've been talking to him a little bit since. He's got it now hooked up in his shop. He's now buzzing away, doing his thing, practicing. So Kyle, if you're watching, keep going, dude. This is really cool to see. One of the biggest missions with my channel is to spread the love of TIG welding that I have with as many people as I can. I want to give people tips on my channel here or wherever, the most important stuff that they need to learn this trade, and any chance to help somebody grow or learn or encourage somebody to enjoy the trade as much as I do. I'm going to do something like this for Kyle or anybody else out there I can. Obviously, I can't give all my machines away. You get the idea. So big shout out to Chris, or as everybody calls him at the school, Mr. Armstrong, for bringing me up for this cool opportunity. Now, I did a huge breakdown on how important it is to wrap your corners properly and connect your welds. That episode is right here. This goes way deeper into the techniques that I talked about, so you can get really good results with the small details as well as your overall consistency. So go ahead and watch that episode next. Spread some positivity in the world today. My name is Dusty for Pacific Arc TIG Welding. Bill and Chill, we will talk soon. Peace.